I think he says some things that he oversteps the mark sometimes. He said something about Johnny Sexton, brought his mum and dad into things 4 years ago, and I think that's not benefiting or building the game. I think that's scaremongering, and we don't want that. We're trying to help the product rather than hinder it, and I think sometimes he gets it wrong. I think that stuff about brutality, I think that's harmless enough, particularly when you get your backside handed to you, after the game. So we can all have a chuckle about it. But I think there's certain things that are close, are on the edge, and sometimes he does overstep the mark. But there's no doubt, from a media perspective, and I'm in the media as well, I'm intrigued as to what he's going to say. It's going to be a good soundbite. He's a smart man, very well thought. I was reading an article on him today, even going back to when he was Japan coach, about how generous he was with all the media as well. So there's many different sides to Eddie as well. I don't think I think it would be short to say that he just shoots from the hip. I think he very much thinks about what he's saying and doing, and it's quite calculated in a positive sense, if I can put it that way. No, I remember really stupidly in 2004 when we beat England in Twickenham after the World Cup. I was taking the mickey out of Roy Keane, something Roy Keane said about prawn sandwich brigades, and I said, I hope we gave the prawn sandwich brigade something to choke on in the stand, and Clive didn't like that at all. and from the reaction on the pitch, I don't think Lawrence liked it at all either. And I played poorly, and I don't know whether it was as a result of that got in my head, or whether I just had an off day. It probably, because we won the game, it got pushed to one side. But I had a poor game that day, and it's hard to know what to joining the dots to. But I remember thinking I'm going to keep my mouth shut from now on. No, it's genuinely not. I think yes, of course, there's huge corporate in all rugby these days, and that's the reality. The same in the Aviva, where there's been question marks about the atmosphere created because in inverted commas, the true fans aren't getting an opportunity to go to those games and roar for their team, and there's probably a bit of substance in that, and I would say it's no different in Twickenham. The reality is, though, that there's another 30,000 in Twickenham that are able to bring that decibel level up, so maybe it's maybe you don't get it quite the same as we're receiving it in Dublin, but it's it is what it is. You'll have people doing out there at the back of the Range Rovers in the West Car Park, and that's always been a thing, and that's what you associate with rugby as well. And what's negative about that as well? If that's their thing, well, brilliant. And if they're able to do it, fantastic. It's part of the history of Six Nations as well, isn't it? When you go to Twickenham and you see that, in many ways as a player, you look over enviously thinking, there they are enjoying their champagne and their canapes, and here we are, butterflies in our stomach rumbling, and we got to go out and play a game, and they're looking up going, God, they're so lucky they're going to go out to play for their national team now in a minute. Grass is always greener.